Beautiful. Welcome back to the Days In podcast. I almost said the Days In podcast. That's the old podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Unscripted podcast. Man, excited to be here with you, Adam, man, and dive into what you've been doing, how faith has really driven a lot of what kind of your trajectory is now within business and a lot of what you're doing through TikTok, man. And I'm excited to dive into that and kind of what your story is behind that too.
Yeah, man. Pumped to be here.
Fantastic.
You guys got you got the fancy lighting, you got, the headphones, the mics, you guys are dialed. You know what I mean? This is official.
Fantastic, man. Good to hear. Man, I think we should just dive in first.
Let's do it.
What is your business today, and how did you get into it?
Yeah. So I kind of run in two different lanes. So I'm the president and CEO of Sherman Portfolios. We're a registered investment advisory firm. We build tactical research for about 600 financial advisors all over the country. And we manage assets through, investment strategies and research. So we're kind of the advisor to the advisors, if you will.
Mhm.
And then I have a company called Kingdom Mindset Strategies. And through that, I do CEO coaching. I write a weekly newsletter for Christian business leaders, and I do some speaking as well. And then through that, I've also built an operating system that allows businesses to execute and run well, but through a biblical lens.
I love that. And I think this is like a really good segue. So a lot of what we've been talking about lately is this idea of heaven in business, right? And what does that look like from top down, right? If we're looking at it from just a management perspective, but also like, what does it look like in the day-to-day perspective of employees, of people, lives changed, right? And I used to have this lens of where it was like, oh, like we're having all-out revival parties like inside of a boardroom, right? But really, it was a skewed way of looking at it. And now I realize, and maybe you have the same kind of idea behind it. I really want to dive into this operating system that you have is maybe it's a mom and a daughter relationship being brought back together. Maybe it's somebody's uncle or somebody's grandfather that survived cancer, right? And I love that outlook, right? Because I think a lot of times we try to really have this overly spiritual connection with things when really God's at work in everything. And
Yeah, I mean that's a beautiful way to put it. I think we serve a God of details. He holds all things together and created matter from nothing in an infinitely complex way. So we just need to be about the same detail. You know what I mean? So, I think sometimes his light's on and sometimes his light's off. You know what I mean? And I'll let you guys get to what you guys want to see if you get those back on.
I don't even know at this point in time, man.
Because you'll be able to chop this thing up. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
The enemy's coming after it. You know what I mean? There it is.
Hey, you cannot turn the light off on us.
No, I prayed so heavy over this one. I was thinking about it as I was driving over here, and not to interrupt you, what your response was, but I was thinking about how I still get nervous for every podcast, and I think that's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Prayer, obviously giving it up to the Lord, but continue.
Yeah. Listen, man. I heard it said recently on a record that there's an L in every lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
We don't learn from our wins. We learn from our losses.
Absolutely.
And so, as things go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
it's an opportunity for us. You truly, you win or you learn. You know what I mean? So, I think God is a God of detail. And so I think we're called as leaders in business to carry both the vision and the execution. And that's kind of a big passion of mine. I think that we're called to be stewards and that's why the newsletter is called The King's Business, because it's all his. We're just stewards, right? It's like when people talk about tithing and their money, it's like the question isn't how much are you going to give God? The question is how much are you going to keep for yourself? Because it's all his. So in business, how are we going to use what we've been given, our time, talent, and treasure, to advance the kingdom? And that can mean both, beautiful, big dreams that God puts on our heart. And that comes out in the practical application of caring for someone very practically in that business, day to day. So going in between those two things, I think, is a good stewardship.
I love that. I love how you put it, right? And with the Kingdom OS or the Unbreakable OS that you have, right? I've seen a few of the videos of kind of you talking about it a little bit, but kind of give us an overview of what that is and how did it come about?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at the state of, I would say, business, if you will, right? You have a lot of people in business. You have a lot of systems. I've used a bunch of systems myself in a bunch of different businesses and contexts. From a career in corporate America to a small business to a complete startup to a business that needed help scaling, and there were kind of lessons that I learned along the way. And so the way it came out for me was, this is an outpouring of 25 years of business experience into codifying that framework, but doing it through a biblical lens. And so the system is based on 7 laws. So there are 7 laws in the Unbreakable operating system, and they are meant to have a holistic view on a business and not just how do you 10x your business.
Right. Yeah.
Because God handles, right? Like 1 Corinthians tells us that we plant and we water, but it's only God that gives the growth.
Right.
We don't handle outcomes. We're not in the outcome business. We're in the activity business.
Right.
So how can we be stewards of those activities? And then God will decide what grows and what doesn't. And hopefully we can be stewards to then continue to pour activities on the resources that he's growing because it's him. So the laws are really, you start with having a purpose beyond profit, right? So that's law 1. And that is, your business has to stand for something bigger than profit, but it's not instead of profit, because we know money is a store of value, but it's not something that we need to control us. Meaning, Tim Keller said, have a level of apathy in your relationship with money. More money, less money, right? I've had a lot, I've had a little, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's in relation to contentment. It's not about, lifting up a car. And so having purpose beyond profit means we're still going to steward well for profit, but the purpose is bigger than that. The second law is the Genesis principle, which is really coming back to applying first principles in your business and asking questions like, if I were to start this business over today from scratch, what would I do different? And that means that we test everything against unless this is against the laws of physics, I'm going to rethink how we're approaching this thing. The third law is something I call the Net 7 method. And really that's about financial discipline. A lot of the systems I saw out there didn't really focus on financial discipline. It was all just either about growth or project management. And I'm a banker by trade. So Net 7 method is about having 7 months of operating cash reserves at all times so that you can survive a 2-quarter zero revenue impact to your business. And then also closing your books within 7 days of the end of any month so that you can look at your profit and loss and your balance sheet and understand them as a CEO, not say my accountant handles that. Law number 4, is the brand moat, which is building a moat around your business that, as you guys know, a brand is really what protects businesses. It's why people buy Coke and not RC Cola, even though they're fundamentally the same thing. And then decision velocity is law 5, and that's about how you manage execution and giving you an actual system to manage execution so that you're moving toward a goal and not kind of shiny object syndrome, which is very common for founders. The hot dog stand effect is law 6, and it's called that. It's about caring for your people and managing your people. And it's called the hot dog stand effect because my best friend and partner, when we were in another business and I was getting ready to leave that because I felt God was calling us into this new business. He came in one day and I said, hey, I got to talk to you about something. And I hadn't told him anything about it. I said, there may be this, thing that I think we should go do. And he said, I'm going to stop you right there. If it's a hot dog stand, I'm in. Just tell me where we're going. And so it's about how do you build, then in the practical nature, how do you build that kind of relationship with people in the way that you lead so that they'll come with you to the hot dog stand? And then that all produces and sort of is a pinnacle in the seventh law, which is called asymmetric endurance. And that's what all of this produces, which is a concept in asymmetry of things moving in opposite directions. Okay. And so what we're saying there is, my concept is, by doing all of these things, as your business grows, the involvement of the CEO or the owner should move in the opposite direction of the growth. As your business grows, you need to be less involved in it. As your business is shrinking, you need to be more involved. So that's going in between that. And so that's about, how do you build systems? How do you run a business so that from a stewardship perspective, it's not just reliant upon you? Because in my opinion, if you're leading that way, then you're leading selfishly, and you're putting families, mothers, fathers, children, lives at risk. Because if you were to die tomorrow, things could crumble and fall apart. And that's not stewardship. You need to make yourself dispensable, not indispensable. And what you'll find is that not only does God work through that, because you're giving him the glory, not trying to make yourself the glory, but people will follow you. People will follow you all the way, because they believe that you actually want what's best for everyone and not just you. So all of that, those 7 laws, is what makes up Unbreakable OS, or the Unbreakable operating system, and kind of is the way that I've run these businesses and stewarded businesses, God's businesses, over the last 20, 25 years.
That's so cool.
Wow.
I want to go back real fast, because you talked about tithing, and I know this is kind of off subject, it seems like, but I heard it said once that we talk about how we give our tithe to the Lord. And I was listening to, it was actually my pastor at Anchor Church, and he was saying, I've switched that terminology to, I bring my offering back to the Lord, because it's already his, like you were just saying. And so we know that I laid awake last night, and I was watching. My wife was pretty frustrated with me, but I was looking you up. I was going through your TikTok. I was just, although we're unscripted, I really like to kind of do some research and just kind of figure out who we're talking to. And I noticed, based upon those 7 laws and some of the things that I looked up, especially your mission to give, I think it was 51% back, from Sherman. Is that correct? From Sherman?
Yeah.
And so we know that you're giving back, but could you walk us through how you bring back to the Lord within like the confines of your business, your coaching, and like, is there a specific avenue in which you bring that back to, your faith and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I love that. So at Sherman, part of the reason that I came there and I left the automotives company that was going incredibly well was purely because we were going to give 51% of our net income to advance the gospel, and that I could lead the business for Jesus from the front door. That was the whole, because initially the person who came to me and said, "Hey, you want to do this?" I said, "No, I'm not interested. No, thank you." And he said, "Well, I know your heart for the Lord. I know you've been trying to, think through how you can do this. We're going to set this business up this way, and you can lead it for Jesus from the front door." And I was like, "Okay, wait a minute. Like, maybe God, maybe this is what you're doing. Maybe this is what you want." And so at Sherman, like everything that we do, our mission statement is that we launch financial strategies to propel lives for Christ. That's right on the website. Our core values are the fruits of the Spirit from Galatians 5, because that's what I want to be held to as a standard, not excellence and integrity. I want it to be the fruits of that. And then the giving for me is a lot of what I do with coaching is I coach Christian CEOs. So that's about, how do I help them to use their business as a ministry to see Jesus made known through excellence and through, expression of his love in the business. And then I write the King's Business newsletter every week. And in that, I cover the word, the world, and the work. And those 3 things are encouragement from God's word, something that's happening in the world from trends, technology, AI, and then the work, something practical, a tool that you can use in your business right now. And that's a quote, that's a free resource for all of the people who subscribe to it. And it's probably one of the favorite things that I do. I get to write that every week, and that's just giving to see who it can impact. And I don't even know. I heard earlier this week from someone that, "Oh yeah, actually that person is following your newsletter, and they took this video that you did and they actually showed it at a business they were at to encourage them and what they were doing next." I had no idea. Right.
Oh,
and that's
man.
Amazing. Yeah.
That's the kind of thing where it's like, I don't handle the outcomes. I'm not in the outcome business.
Yeah. I love that. Right. Because I think business owners, entrepreneurs, no matter what conference that you go to, it's about an outcome, right? Like, how can you 10x, or how can we increase revenue growth for FY26 Q1? Like
That's right.
it's always about the next quarter. It's always about the next fiscal year. It's always about the next funding round, right? Like, it's always about an outcome. And I started thinking about this a little bit ago. I would say probably over the last 10 years, right? Is what if the we weren't looking to our books to figure out what was next? What if we started like praying about what should come next, right? What is the next step that we need to take? Obviously, there's financial discipline in there. Obviously, there's discipline in understanding how to run a business as a whole. But how do we put God at the front lines to say, this is how we run businesses? This is the integrity of which we are held by. And so I love that you're doing that. But what I think is even more clever is the wrong word. I think it's thoughtful, is how you're going about it, right? It's creating a system around it to be able to give a Christian entrepreneur exactly what they need in the moment that they need it, right? So it is the exact same process if somebody went to, I don't know, a 10x conference, or if they went to
Yes.
it's the same process, but it's flipped, right? It's
And it's the biggest differences, and the reason I've used the systems, and I've run and scaled businesses using the EOSs and using the biggest challenge I had was they were not coming from a biblical lens. And that's all that really mattered to me. So then it was like, difference here is that it's, in my mind, it is, people can look at the system for what it is. And even if they aren't believers, the idea is, if they use this and they understand that it's actually rooted in biblical wisdom, it will point them and draw them to want to find out about who wrote that, about who is the God we serve, that would come up with something that can provide such dynamic creation of amazing businesses, because it's the king's business. I'm not, this formula is not my formula, right? It's a formula created out of the disciplines of biblical wisdom, and then applying that. That's why the parable of the talents, people want to talk about it, but they spend a little bit too much time talking about that, because it's like, well, you need to 5X, and you need to, don't bury it, and make sure you're growing it and bringing back that money. But then it's like, how are we talking about loving sacrificially? How are we talking about the fruits of the spirit and being, and having self-control and being gentle? And is any of that part of the equation, or is it just about that gold? You know what I mean? And listen to the words of Jesus, and you'll see. And the beauty too is that I want it to be simple, because I look at how Christ spoke, and it was simple, but it was deep, and it was an crazy infinite well of beauty in these very simple statements. And so how can we then express and reflect his beauty in the simplicity of things like, hey, I can show you how to execute better, so that a solopreneur who has no experience in these things can have the disciplines to run a really good business and steward it well. And it's not just about the dreaming, and it's not just about the numbers. It's about the whole of the person. And and what we become is more important than what we create.
Mhm.
That's impactful. Yeah.
I love that, because I think we're at an age where the beauty and the romanticism of entrepreneurship is starting to be flipped a little bit, because
Yeah.
every guru on TikTok and Instagram and Vine and every social platform is going, oh crap, this is hard. This is
Yeah.
really,
And
they hit the point of where nobody's telling you that you're doing a good job anymore. Nobody's giving you a pat on the back. Nobody is sitting here saying, that's an amazing idea, keep going, right? It's you on your computer at midnight going, how am I going to make payroll tomorrow?
yeah, and that's where you look, and the CEOs that I've coached, the ones that I coach now, the people that I've engaged with, there's a very common thread in entrepreneurship, and that is, you're really good at selling and marketing, and you're horrendously unskilled at running operations through systems and understanding finance, profit and loss, how to manage expenses, cash flow. And I don't mean cash flow like checking your bank balance to see if payroll's happening tomorrow or telling your accountant, hey, do I have enough? I mean, understanding what a profit and loss is, understanding what a balance sheet is, having the actual disciplines, right, of a CEO, which is you've got to understand growth, which is sales marketing. You've got to understand operations, and you've got to understand finance. And if you do, you can run any business. I mean, I've been a banker. I've been led an automotive aftermarket suspension company, and now I have investment advisory, but then I also have a coaching and consulting, and I'm running a SaaS. Like, they all have the same disciplines, and that's kind of the idea. And when you talk about, like, you want to talk about numbers, there are on average from 2005 to 2020 about 2.7 million new business applications in the United States every year. Post-COVID, starting in 2021, that number jumped to over 5 million a year. You're getting more, right? And 90% of those new people coming in and applications coming in have no idea what they're doing. And by the way, they don't really want to go get MBAs, and they don't want to like go, because they've got ChatGPT, and they've got large language models that they can dial in, and they've got YouTube where people are giving away, right, how to do it. But I think there's a heavy skew toward here's how to make more revenue. And that's just not the game. I from a business perspective, I actually have no interest in the revenue number because it makes no difference. I have coached and talked to a $60 million, $65 million business that makes about $3 million a year in net profit. And I've talked to a $10 million business that makes $6 million in profit. I've talked to companies where they have 300 employees and they're doing 100 million and they're barely making anything on that bottom line because they have this really heavy infrastructure. And I have talked to and coached to and led other companies where you have 5 people and you're making more profit than that 300 person company. So you have to, once you start understanding sort of the mechanics behind business, not the mechanics behind selling, and here's how to drop ship, and here's how to do product marketing, and here's how to get calls to action on your ads. I'm talking about running a business. Man, you can fly. You can fly. You don't feel that anxiety.
Yeah, I think the focus on human capital can be detriment to a business if they don't understand how to automate their own processes. Right. I think I built out a productized service inside of a MSP over the last couple of years. I'll say last year, and that was the biggest issue. Right, is when you build out a productized service, right, it has to be 75 to 90% automation, and then 20 to 25 to 30% human capital, right? Because you can only scale human capital to a certain extent, where like it no longer makes sense, right? As well as the heirs of business freaking flip like crazy, right? We saw it.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing that I had to do. I was like, hey, we didn't get the leadership buy-in that we needed to be able to get the software that was needed. And so I scaled the productized service to about $1 million a year in revenue. And when I
Congrats, man. That's amazing.
I appreciate it. And when I left, it was they completely dismantled the entire team, and I was like, it sucks. But if they would have just if you bite on the software and make it happen, right? And this is for any business, right? Any business that doesn't rely on human capital, right? Not like manufacturing or anything like that, or even moving into like doctors, lawyers, anything like that. Like, most businesses can be automated to a certain extent, right? Back-end processes can be automated to a certain extent. Yeah. Back office almost always can be automated, right? But nobody's actually going. It's for some reason, and maybe this is a question to you, right? Because you have a lot more years on this than I do. Is why is it that people are so willing to shell out cash for 15 different softwares and then shelf it?
It's the illusion of action. And it's kind of the Wizard of Oz effect. Part of why a lot of entrepreneurs will hire a marketing agency, will hire a consultant, is because they feel as if they don't understand it and there's some sort of magic behind marketing, right? The new kid, right? it says there's no magic in marketing. Like, this is just, right? I've got tools. I got, I'll dump in Opus clip. I can make 25 clips a minute. I can then automate. I'll create agentic AI to then post that. I'll use a scheduler. It'll adjust, like, and that's where I think some of this is going to be a lot of noise. Like, if you're not already tired right now of the amount of content that you're taking in, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
You're lying to yourself. And human interaction is doing this. It will. It just in value,
Yes.
because we won't know what's real, right?
Yep.
Unless somebody knows that, hey man, I can see you, I can feel you, and I can understand the nuance. We can have all the understanding we want. You can have knowledge without wisdom. Knowledge isn't good enough, right? Like, hey man, I know what it takes I know what I need to do to be in good shape. I know that I shouldn't be on my phone as much as I should. I know that all of these things. That's execution. If execution is the truth, intention is a rumor.
Oh, I like that.
You can have all the intentions you want, but execution is going to tell you what the real deal is, right? And not to say that intentions don't matter,
Right.
but execution will tell you what the reality is. So, man, I didn't mean to have my business go off the rails like this. Okay, but what did you do about it from a stewardship perspective? Did
Right.
you invest the time and resources? And it's not about dumping another software stack, but it's a lot easier because it sounds like a silver bullet. And that's what's attractive to people. People don't want discipline, right? People don't want to hear that they need to work out for the next 365 days, an hour a day, then they'll be in good shape. And they need to adjust their eating. They want to hear, what can I do in 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Man, that's so true. I don't know how many people in softwares that claim, "Oh, we'll solve all your lead generation problems. We'll solve all of your execution problems. You don't have to, it's 100% hands off. We do it for you. Just look at all the booking appointments that are on your calendar." And you're right, it is silver. And you said it at the beginning of the podcast, as entrepreneurs have shiny object syndrome, right? And it's.
Well, this is the reason why you need a system. So kind of the analogy that I use is, most entrepreneurs' business is like a box of fireworks. And the entrepreneur is the spark. Okay. They've got that juice. They've got that fire in their belly. Right. And that's why they want to go hear Gary Vee and Alex Hormozi. They want to go get fired up because they've got that energy. And that's an important factor. But when your business is a box of fireworks, there's a few things that can happen. One, it might be a really cool show. You might get like a amazing fire off, right? And you're like, wow, look at this cool show. It might blow your hand off. Or it might burn down everything you love because it's random. We don't know what's going to happen. We've got this spark constantly flowing into this disorganized box of fireworks. And so leveraging a system like Unbreakable operating system, or really any system, okay, is like building an engine. And when you build engines take time to build. But when you build an engine, you can idle. You can go 60. You can put on cruise control. You can go 120. Might test the limits a little bit, but you've got an engine. And you might need to add some performance enhance, but you've got an engine. And that engine is reliable and it can last, and you need to maintain it. But it is what is required to build a business that lasts. And so I think that shiny object syndrome, right, is that spark. And that spark is, and I was coaching a guy today. Like, man, I've got this opportunity and I've got this opportunity and I'm just trying to figure out what to do. And I'm like, just stop. No, we're going to figure out the 3 things that you want to do only this year. And that's the other thing. Like, part of my system is I don't look past this calendar year from a goal setting perspective. I think you can look at, I would say there's a lot of experienced people who would tell you, and I do it, where I'm going to look at what I think the world might look like 3 years from now, but I'm going to plan only for this calendar year. And then I'm going to relentlessly execute every month toward just that. And then we'll start it over for next calendar year. And we're going to execute relentlessly for that. And because ask people about their 5-year plan that they made in 2019. And did they see COVID coming? You know what I mean? Did they see? So, you got to see, like, in my experience, planning past a year is dreaming. And that's okay. Dreaming is not a bad thing. I think it's a great thing. You want to dream about where you think things might go. But when it's time to execute, like this is why with the system, you don't actually need anyone. It doesn't rely on any one person. The goals become the leaders. Because now, yeah, so I run in decision velocity, I run something called Unbreakable cycles. So in these cycles, they are 1 month cycles. The way it works is you start by establishing your big 3 domains. Yeah, we're in. So the cycles.
Yes.
So do you mind if I share my screen for 1 second?
Go for it.
Okay. I'm going to share something. I'm going to try to share something.
This is going to be the first on the podcast. I don't think anybody's ever shared anything on the podcast.
You see what I mean? You got to do it, man.
I'm all for it.
Here we go. So essentially the way the system works is you establish your big 3 domains. Every company only runs on 3 things: growth, finance, and operations. That's it. There's no other thing. Every other company in the whole world all runs on that. You assign 3 leaders to that. If you're a solopreneur, you're running all of them. But the fact is you might have somebody leading them depending on the size of your business. Then you're going to set the big 3 calendar year goals. So I don't care if it's July. What do you want to do from a big goal perspective just through this calendar year? Okay. And then what happens is every month you run a pitch. That pitch looks against those 3 goals. So I run a decision pitch meeting, okay, where the team members will come with a pitch. Here's your idea. They write it beforehand. They submit it beforehand. Okay. And then they come and say, hey, I'm going to fill out this information, right? And then they get 3 minutes to pitch the idea. They get 7 minutes to deliberate, and it's 1 minute to decide. That's it. So we don't run on these long meetings. If it makes it in, then it's approved. Okay. And if it doesn't, it gets deleted because it might be a shiny object. And we know it's a shiny object because it's not going meaningfully toward those big 3 goals we already set. And you need to have at least one goal, one thing happening every month toward growth, toward finance, and toward operations. And that ensures that you're running a balanced business. You're not just focused on the growth side, which is poor discipline. Once they get approved, they get into this, essentially a tracker. Every week, you get some progress update. It's, it's moving forward, the momentum's gaining, or it's executed. And then at the end of the month, you're going to track execution. Did you execute or did you fail? Because those are the only 2 options. And then we run it back. So like, for instance, we just held decision pitch meetings for our company at the end of this month for August. Everybody gets a chance to pitch. And then once they make that pitch, if it makes it in, then that's what we're doing in August. But this is the time frame. And what this makes sure is that preparation is stewardship, right? So you need to prepare yourself before I hear the pitch. And then 2, there are times where people are going to pitch stuff, happens all the time. People are going to pitch stuff that I actually don't want to do, but they actually are meaningfully moving us toward these goals. So what you're doing is you're compounding your effort toward that while keeping yourself balanced on execution, on all 3 aspects of your business. Most business leaders are doing something all the time only toward growth, sometimes toward operations, but it's not big enough. It's like it's whack-a-mole. Like, what do I need to do next? Okay, we finished that project. What's the next? It's like this constant flow that doesn't actually get you to the big things that you want to get done. So like in a business, it might be, you might have a goal on growth to do X million dollars in revenue, and you might have a net profit margin of X on finance. You might have, I want to do 100% automation of my product delivery from an operations perspective. So what you do is that engine now can run without you. Whether or not you're there, it makes no difference. Everybody knows what the big 3 goals are. And the way I built the system that'll come out in Q4 is we're using the large language models to do that analysis. So once you've set those goals and they submit their pitch, it'll come back and go, you didn't talk about this. It actually isn't going toward this goal. It has nothing to do with any of our big 3 goals. You need to rewrite, right? So that can run without me being there. I could be on vacation, but it ensures that execution and momentum continues toward those big 3 goals for the company.
Man, that's awesome. Okay. I love that. That's a lot to take in, but I love that, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about ownership, right? You have to own the process. You have to own like the tracking and execution of the whole thing, right? I talk about this on.
What you do is you just own execution and failure, right? And so as much as it's a lot to take in, I could say it very simply to a business owner, and that's set your big goal for the calendar year and then do something this month toward it and track if you did it or you didn't. Right. But what we're doing here is right. We're building it into a system that then allows you to see it, to track it, to, actually run it through what is good discipline so that if you were gone, it's not just a phone conversation or a Zoom meeting with a debrief. It's an actual, business that you're managing versus a product that you're selling.
Because at a certain point, right, it becomes second nature, right? And that's the goal, is for it to become second nature, right? Where everybody's not going, you're not sending a reminder, or the the leader's not sending a reminder. Everybody knows that, okay, hey, this is the day that we have our meeting. This is just what we do now.
Yeah, they know, and they get their pitches ready, right? They're like, hey, and they don't get to just pitch what they're excited about, because everything has to go against, well, does this go toward our big 3 goals? No. Okay, well then don't talk about it. Don't pitch it.
Man, I want to switch gears a little bit. Where did your faith develop from, and how did it bring you into business?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so I was an atheist until I was 18.
Wow.
And I was pretty staunchly against anyone who was a Christian, and was pretty heavy on, spending my time understanding. I always had a desire to understand. And so I've studied quantum mechanics and string theory and anything I could to try and understand what was happening around me and kind of why we were here. And one day, as I was deep into that study, I had this kind of profound, for me, not for anyone else in the world or philosophers of the age, but I had this profound understanding that as you start studying matter and you break down matter, it's infinitely divisible, if that makes sense. Meaning like, okay, so it's an atom and it's a proton and a neutron, but what's that made of? And what's that made of? And what's that made of? And what's that made of? Well, hold on. You can't get to a start of that. So it's infinite in. Literally, matter is infinite in. And then when you look out into the universe, there's no end to the universe. It's infinite out. And so I just went, wow, hold on. It makes sense that if we are living in an infinite existence, something must exist outside of this. And that was the first consideration I had of like, something had to have created this, right? And then somebody invited me to a church service, like a teen service. And I sat in the back by myself and heard the gospel preached and wept by myself and said, yeah, I want to follow you, Jesus. And I was 18 years old, and then my whole life changed overnight. A slow and, progressive working that God did in me. And, in business, that was the easy part for me. I grew up with very little, I was on free lunches. I was out of the house and lived in a house with no power. I used to hang my shirt from the bathroom and turn the water on hot to steam it out so I didn't have wrinkles. But for me, it was like, man, I know if I can make some money, then I'll have security. So I'm just going to grind it out. And so, really I was chasing money, and I was chasing success, and I was chasing meaning in that, even through my, early faith years. And so, yeah, that not until I joined C12, which is an organization where Christian business leaders meet once a month to talk about how they can run their business as a ministry. And they do that in person all over the world. There's thousands of Christian CEOs who are part of it, that I got exposed to this concept of business as a ministry. And it really started kind of taking a hold of my heart on how I could then not just see business as business and see my faith as my faith. Because before it was like, yeah, I can live out, but I'll kind of show it. I was a managing director at a Fortune 150 bank. So, there's only so much that you can share, right? But you can live it out and be salt and light. But after being in C12, God just really put it on me that I needed to be bold for him, and I needed to lead a business for Jesus from the front door and let everything else fall where it may. And that's where I developed a level of apathy over the last, 5-6 years toward money position and success because it made no difference. I had experienced it. I went from, selling cell phones in a single person kiosk inside of a Walmart, where I'd throw dummy phones in people's carts to get them to come back and talk to me to, being the managing director at a Fortune 150 bank. I launched a digital bank, and we did $1 billion in our first month. And I opened 22 locations and call centers, and it was when I was at my deepest depression and the least satisfied. I got everything I thought I wanted, and it was nothing. It was dust. And so I think that's rough. Everybody kind of chases this peak, and then most people get to it, and it's the same story, right? You heard from Scotty Scheffler earlier this week, or whether it was Tom Brady before. Like, you get there and you go, well, this couldn't be it.
Yeah.
Man, it's so funny. Like, I've hit a few goals in my life, and I was like, all right, when I make this, I'm going to like celebrate it. Or when I get to this, I'm going to do this, and I get to this. And I used to think about these times and these moments and go, okay, like these are some celebratory moments. And then I hit them, and I'm going, another day.
Yeah.
It's just, this is great. All right, on to the next goal, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. Like I was homeless, and in my early 20s, and I was in and out of homelessness, and so for me, like I had that chip on my shoulder, right? I was like, all right, I'm never going back there, right?
That's right.
And that drove me to some sort of like extent, and it was good and bad. Right. I think the good was it gave me the hunger to get out of a situation that was bad. And I think that was good. But what happened is the bad side of it is that you bury a lot of stuff and you don't work through a lot of crap that you need to work through that sneaks up on you when you make it. Right. And then
Yeah,
puts
and I
in
think too, we live in a performative environment. And even though I say it, I don't actually have an understanding of the grace of God. And so I think because we chase validation in everything, whether it's being a great friend, being a great believer, being a great father, husband, employee, successful business person, we're just in the world of performance. And I think understanding that whether you're homeless or have $100 million, God's favor isn't different. His love for you isn't different. You are known and loved because of who you are, not because of any of those things. And that when you truly believe that, then you can let go of outcomes
Yep.
and just
Yep.
chase, stewardship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Michael kind of stole it from me, but I was going to say, considering your faith, kind of that moment where you let go and let God, but considering the fact that you came from where you were and are where you are now, I can say you're very articulate. You're very, there's a lot of you're very optimistic, it seems, and I think for some, they kind of struggle with that because it tends to come with that, just that generalized opinion that, oh, well, Christians or people who follow Christ think they're too good for everyone else. I'm like, man, I just couldn't be happier to just be alive right now. And so, I'm just curious how that's like affected your business. Do you come across, and I'm not to spew negativity or anything, but do you come across those obstacles where, because I know a lot of, and not to scroll, but I know a lot of guys and that I've come across in small groups and that sort of thing of men, and there tends to be one like conversation subject and topic. Work.
Yeah.
My work. I'm potentially going to get a new.
What do you do?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
A new promotion or whatever the case is. And so business is obviously very heavy laden on men's minds right now, provision over their families.
Mhm.
Do you come across that in your coaching or dealing with other entrepreneurs or founders where they kind of like push back against your kind of sense of just understanding and direction because of your relationship with Christ? Or does that kind of tend to gel together because you deal with a majority of kind of Christ-led entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Yeah. So because I feel like part of the separator for me and what I wanted was that I'm not an armchair consultant, right? I'm a CEO of a business. I run a business, God's business, but I have the stewardship that I get to run it. The coaching I do out of passion. And so therefore, when I'm coaching them from the place of being an active CEO, not I was a CEO 5 years ago, or I've been in business for 30 years and now I'm going to coach you on how to be great at business. It's like, no, man, I'm with you. Like today I'm dealing with it. And so because of that, like I purposefully limited the number of people that I will coach. And I only coach Christian CEOs because my intention is to use the experience of life that God's given me to help equip believing leaders to make their businesses great for his glory. And so I think by the time they get to me, the alignment is there. But I can tell you that as somebody who is highly logical, highly systems based, I want to push, right? I'm a pusher. There's plenty of CEOs that I talk to out there who are like, yeah, that's good. But I would say for the most part, and maybe it's just the time that we live in now, they have an ear to listen because everyone's talking about how to 10x your business and everyone's talking about how to go make some more money. And anybody I talk to that's made money, they know, and we can relate. Like it's not what you think it is. And I my daughters and my son are not going to remember or care about what I did at work 20 years from now. They're going to care about the time we spent together.
Absolutely.
And that's what I want to care about, So I think, as there's doubling of new entrepreneurs and as people feel that grind, man, of waking up every day and just having to deal with the mud, I think that their ears actually, it's like God's using it to till the ground.
Yeah. We actually just talked about, kind of purpose in business and just because you see it on TikTok, like doesn't necessarily mean that you should go and do it. Right. But that's whatever you said earlier, Gary Vee, he'll kind of tell you that you need to go and you could do it. I'll go flip and that sort of thing. But I'm curious because I know you're a purpose driven entrepreneur as well and business leader. What does that look like? What does that purpose look like at the end? How do you know, like for Michael, he'll go and we started our relationship this way in business partnership. I give it 6 months. And if it doesn't produce, like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm going down a different avenue. What is the purpose? How do you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is impact, right?
So I think it's a beautiful question. And I'm gonna give you a little bit of a hard time.
Yeah.
Your question has a base in outcomes.
Sure.
Meaning you want to measure, have I achieved this purpose? And I don't see anywhere in the Word of God that he calls us to do that, to measure if we've arrived. What I see is that you'll know a tree by its fruit, and that, show me your works without faith, right? So I think what I would say to that is like the people around you and closest to you, asking them to kind of take an account of what they see as the fruits in your life it's a good question to ask regularly, and not ask your business friends about how they think you're doing. And if they think your podcast and your book and your whatever is like flowing and it's cool, man, you're making so much impact. Because for me, if one person somewhere in the world hears this, their life could be impacted and they could take action to change what they're doing and live for the Lord. And that is nothing I ever need to know about. And that's why I say I'm not in the business of outcomes, because he's going to handle that part of it. But I think how do I know if I'm doing it is if every day you wake up, you are seeking first the kingdom of God. And practically, what does that look like? It looks different every day, and I don't, I think if you look to measure, like, and this is a really crass way of saying it, but like how many old ladies walk across the street to check off your purpose box, you're never going to check it. And that purpose will change over time. And God will, Ecclesiastes 3, right? There's a time and a season for everything. Sometimes it's winter, sometimes it's spring, sometimes it's summer, and God's doing different things in all of those. There's a time for each of them. And so just being faithful to him first all that other stuff it's handled. He handles the outcomes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Outcomes. Do not plan outcomes.
You
That's
don't have
not.
to chase outcomes. Don't chase them.
Don't
You can
chase them.
plan.
Plan them. Don't chase
Yeah,
them.
you can plan them. Plan
Don't
right.
chase them.
You know, Proverbs would tell us that the plans of the diligent lead to abundance,
Mm-hmm.
right? But haste leads to poverty.
Right.
So we don't want to be hasty, and we want to be diligent, and we want to plan. But what are we being diligent about? You know what I mean? So this is coming from a guy I've got goals and I've got execution and I'm setting, plans, but my hands are so open with them because the outcome is going to be what the outcome is going to be. Whatever God is going to grow, he's going to grow. So
Right.
I think that there's a freedom in that,
I love
and
that.
it frees you from anxiety. It frees you from performance. It frees you from, am I good enough? It's like I heard Francis Chan say on an interview with Lecrae just recently, like, man, it's crazy how many of us don't really believe that God loves us. That like we're not sure. We need to perform to prove that we love God and that he loves us. We're trying to prove our love to him. And he's like, man, can you imagine if your kid was like, I'm 90% sure my dad loves me. And we're talking about the God of the universe sitting on his throne, looking down at us, and he loves us. And we don't have to do anything for that love. And I think if you can truly rest in that reality, it frees you. It frees you to be exactly who he created you to be. And you'll do all the things that he, has made you for.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah, because I've chased outcomes. I think I still somewhat chase outcomes because I get myself caught up. I'm 33, going on 34. I get myself caught up thinking that I'm supposed to be somewhere, and that stress just. My wife just looks over at me and she's like, we've got an 18-month-old, son, and she's just like, we need to just relax. She's 28. I'm 33, and you're right. I mean, I think if you can break free of that, and I think this is going to be so important for not just the other men of faith and believers in Christ that might watch this, but also for those that aren't, and are struggling with the fact that they pour in or out every single day,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just like nothing there. And you're like talking about fruit, you're looking for fruit, and there's just nothing around you to grasp onto, or the things that you are grasping onto are so fleeting and so flesh driven that it just leads to this death, so to speak. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about as well. With once you obtain everything, it's
all dust anyway. I promise you. And you can't force fruit to grow.
Oh, absolutely not.
Its season is its season. Its ripeness is its ripeness. And we're sitting over here like 365 days a year that I need some fruit and I want it fresh and I want it ripe. And I'm looking at somebody else who's in fall in their apple picking season and thinking, I've got to run that race. And the fruit is not your doing. You are going to be used, but it's the strength of the root that will produce it. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you, I can tell you all of that, just like I can intellectualize all of it, and I'll still chase outcomes in some ways. And that's what being plugged in. And like, even for me, writing the newsletter every week, writing the King's Business is a letter to myself every week, because I'm always getting it wrong. And so how can I make adjustments and just wake up tomorrow by God's grace and be something slightly, more connected to him, not better, not richer, not more successful, but something more connected to him.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be a good question. I know you love this type of question too. Who are your key players in your life, your confidants that have been with you? I mean, you don't have to name names, but can you think of a few, and how big of an impact was that throughout this process, going from atheism to believing to the businesses, to the top, to restructuring? Do you have a core group, and can you kind of elaborate on how important that is really to structure the right people around you?
That's good.
Yeah, kind of like the show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Yeah. The primary source for all of it from the beginning is my wife, Jen. Her wisdom and discernment is, man, it's been everything. So, and we went from, she would call me to see if she could spend $20 at Target to, to not having it by God's grace. So, I think who you marry, probably one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life, because that is your best friend. That is your best friend. And if it's not your best friend, make some adjustments, man. Start spending time together. And how do you get to know each other? Time. Avatars are just avatars, like it's partly why, like, because I'm not selling a product, we've actually adjusted. And what's crazy is, like, you found us on TikTok, and we're actually going away from it. And it's not because I think it's bad. It's because what we're trying to do is help people. And so it's YouTube. It's like a 45-minute long, not podcast style, but just me and Tom. So the other confidant that I've had for the last almost 7 years is my best friend, Tom. And so, he and I have been linked and locked from the bank to the suspension company to the investment firm to everything. And he knows me and he understands me. He knows all my flaws, plenty of them. He knows, the stuff I do wrong, and, and so he sees me in a different way. And because of that, he can speak into my life in a way, right? Like they say, people don't know what you or care what you know until they know that you care. Right. So those are the two, I would say those are the two main people. My mom, as well. She taught me everything I knew about the hustle. She was a single mom, raised 3 kids. And, I used to clean churches in first grade, and I used to ride on the top of a station wagon to throw the trash out. That was the highlight of our night. So, I think having the right people around you is incredibly important. But what I would say is more important than finding people who you click with is finding people who will be truth tellers.
And yeah, and there's so much truth in that people love to have yes men and yes people around them, because it makes them feel good. It makes them feel validated. It makes them feel like they don't have to work on themselves anymore because they already did the work without doing anything. Right.
Exactly.
It's that instant gratification of like, hey, you're doing great today, man. Of course you can. Of course you can build $1 billion business in healthcare, and you work at Walmart. It's that, right? It's the people that, and that's, you need truth tellers, the people that go, hey, look, yeah, you know what? I think you can build $1 billion business in healthcare, but maybe there's some steps you need to take first.
Yeah, or maybe you can. And that's why it's not just the truth, but again, we just go back to the word. It's the truth and love. So the love part's important, because if somebody loves you, then they care about you, which means now they got permission to tell you that truth.
This is like I said, this is exactly why we're unscripted. We went this way after season 2 of the Days End podcast. And we're like, you know what? We started realizing that the conversations that we were having with some of the founders and entrepreneurs would just shift. We'd set it for an hour, and the next thing we knew, we're at like 2.5 hours, and we just blinked on. So it's just an conversation. And it just tended to be kind of what we navigated towards.
And we realized that a lot of the conversations that we're having and the questions that we would have planned to ask, we never even touched.
Of course.
And so
you're like, how am I gonna make these adjustments live and go get to my questions? And
exactly.
Yeah.
But man, so this has been phenomenal. Like, this is massively just interesting hearing not only your story of faith, but also just what you do in business and how like faith has impacted it so much, right? Because you hear a lot of people like having like faith impacting their business, but not a lot of people are letting it lead them. And so, and I love that what you're doing. So at the end of almost every podcast that we do, I ask 2 questions. And the first one goes like this. First one is, we have 2 different audiences. One audience is people that haven't really made the jump yet, and they're wanting to, and they don't know how to. So what do you say to that person? Then the next one,
the jump for business.
Jump
what are we
into
talking
business,
about?
or jump into whatever it is that their dream may be, right?
Okay.
And then the second one is the seasoned entrepreneur person. They're in it, they're doing it, they've had success, and they're great, but man, they just feel like they're hitting some type of plateau and they don't know where to go. What do you say to that person?
I'll handle them in the order that you gave them. So I think that if you are somebody who has something that you're dreaming about, don't wait, and go now. because we only have today. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. And don't be afraid to fail, because failure is only permanent if you give up. And I have met a lot of smart people who did not find worldly success. I have never found a determined, tenacious person who didn't find worldly success. So be determined, be tenacious. And that means it doesn't matter. You serve an audience of one, and he already loves you. So go do that thing. And if you fail, you're going to learn. There's an L in every lesson. You're going to learn. Your feedback loop is the most important key that you can have in this business world, or in this world of dreaming and trying to do something big. And, for me, just the CEO coaching side of things, and even writing the King's Business, was something I never would have done before. And I really wish I would have done it 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So do it now. And then on the second, seasoned business entrepreneurs are in a really interesting place right now, because as much as the world has changed in the past, the .com era, it's changing more now than it ever has. And it feels overwhelming. And it is overwhelming. But know that the God you serve is not overwhelmed. And this isn't complex to him. And so seek first him, and all of those things in the business will be added. I'm not going to give you another business tip. I'm not going to tell you use my operating system. The only system that you need to use is following Jesus every day, and carve out the time in your calendar, in your schedule, in everything you do to spend time with him. And when you do, reading his word and prayer, everything else comes.
Yeah, it does.
I love that. It's a beautiful way to put it. Adam, thank you. This has been
guys,
really, really interesting, and I'm excited to hear it back in post now too.
Yeah, man. Well, listen, like you said, the advice I gave to the other person is like I give my kids, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? You sent one little video with one person, and you sent a message, and here we are, and now we get to have this conversation. Who knows what that butterfly effect will have on anyone in anywhere for one person. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. I appreciate your heart to reach out. I also just appreciate your guys' heart for taking the time, the effort, and the energy to do this. Know that, just be committed and disciplined, both of you guys, to stick to this. And don't worry about the outcomes. Don't worry about the views. Don't worry about the audience engagement. Don't worry about the likes. Don't worry about the subscribers. Just be committed, because even if you only impact the life of the person you're talking to or each other in this, it's valuable and worthy time.
I love that.
Absolutely. And I know you said you're not going to plug another business pitch or anything like that, but definitely let everyone know where they can find you if that's applicable.
Yeah. So you can go to kingdommindsetstrategies.com, and that'll kind of get you the newsletter, the King's Business newsletter that you can sign up for. Unbreakable-os.com is the operating system that'll be coming out. You can sign up for early access on that, or if you just want to get involved and get more information. And then ShermanPortfolios.com, that's the company that I lead day to day. So, for anybody who's an investment advisor who does tactical investing and wants to learn a little bit more, or if you just want to spy and see what kind of business I run when I say I actually am the leader of a real business, you can go look at that too.
go fact check, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Awesome.
the internet will do its thing.
Great. We're so blessed by your presence. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
It was an honor, and I'm grateful to you guys, and thank you for your time. And I pray that you guys have a beautiful weekend. You mind if I pray us out?
I would love it.
Let's go for it. Absolutely, man.
Father God, I'm just grateful, Lord. I'm grateful for Will and Michael. I'm grateful for what it is that you're doing through their podcast, through their heart. Lord, pray that this message would reach the ears that you intend it to reach, and that it would produce fruit to your kingdom and for your glory forever. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. In Jesus' name.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, brother. See ya.
Catch you on the flip side. Yep.